Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Viking Chats podcast. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Sammy Pahal of UK PropTech Association. Sammy.
Thank you for having me, Kristjan. It's great to be here.
So, we are not strangers. We've known each other for, I was trying to figure this out the other day. It's about 7 years?
I think longer than that because, UKPA officially started in 2017. So 9 years.
We're closing in on a decade.
And I think you were one of the first members.
Yeah.
So, almost a decade as well. Yeah.
Early doors. Yeah. So, look, let's just, for those who aren't familiar with UKPA, because I think on the residential side, and we'll talk a bit more about this later, but I don't think it has the greatest awareness so far on the resi side, and particularly we've got a lot of agents that listen to the podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about what is UKPA and kind of what are its kind of core objectives?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So we're a not-for-profit membership organisation. Our mission has always been to drive digital transformation of the UK property industry. So when we talk about property industry, we're talking about all areas of the built environment, all kind of stages of the property life cycle, from design and construction to an extent, to transactions, to the actual development, to then property management and asset management. So we look at the whole property life cycle.
It's PropTech in the broadest, kind of almost truest sense, right?
Yes.
Anything that, if it's property and it's technology, whatever that blend means, that's kind of what you guys are supporting.
Yes, and the second part of that mission is then to create a conducive environment for innovation, which is both looking at what we can do to support PropTechs to grow and scale and make sure that they've got the insight, the guidance, the expertise, and the policy barriers are not there, but also then thinking about the end user, the clients on the property side, and how making sure that we're giving advice and guidance to them as well on how to navigate digital transformation more broadly, because they're never usually looking at PropTech in isolation. It's usually part of a wider strategy. So, giving them platforms to engage with other professionals in a similar situation, as well as maybe experts to come in and talk about how you form that strategy and procure PropTech.
So your role, for those who aren't familiar with you, what's your kind of role and responsibility within UKPA?
So managing director, which means essentially setting the strategy for what we do, how we deliver on those things. So generally that looks like an events program, educational, thought leadership content through written form or video form, and then working with government as well. So it's to set that strategy of what we do and what the membership proposition is. So our members are usually the PropTech companies and then investors in PropTech. And as you know, we work partly with the British Property Federation, since we're part of the organisation now, who have the property members. So my role is really to think about the membership proposition and the strategy, and to keep evolving that as the industry matures. Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, coming into this, you have a massive background in tech and coding and software, and that was your life before UKPA.
Yeah, not quite, as you know. No, so I always say I'm not a techie. I'm not really a property person either. My background was in psychology. I studied psychology at university. So, and I actually only up until recently thought, am I actually really applying the knowledge that I've got from psychology, my degree, into what I'm doing now? But I would say quite confidently now that I am, because when you're bringing in any change, any transformational change, and technology is quite a big transformational change often, it involves people, it involves processes, it involves trying to understand how to drive that change, how to influence behaviour.
Well, I mean, I think if you look at Anthropic, if you look at Claude, right, the leader, the CEO, she comes from a background of arts and again psychology, which is really fascinating. I was reading an interview her name escapes me right now. I was reading an interview with her the other day, and it's really exciting to see a female CEO head of a big tech company. So that's really exciting, and early stage as well, not someone kind of brought in later on. But I found obviously there is so much debate around AI, and we're not gonna dive into the sea of AI just right now. But it was really interesting because she was basically asked, like, oh, shouldn't you have like a background in computer science or coding? And she was that actually, I see kind of the kind of battleground of AI right now is like the ethics of it and what, as a society, like what are the objectives? What do we really want AI to do for the benefit of society rather than looking at it purely as a tool and like, let's just do whatever, like rather than a scientific approach of let's just see how much it can do and kind of let it roam free and actually thinking more, like I said, from a societal kind of a viewpoint. So it's really interesting that there's that alignment with you guys. So tell us a little bit about your career, because obviously you studied psychology. What did you do in the interim between graduating and UK PA coming up?
Well, I worked at Ordnance Survey for about 5 years, so straight out of university, worked there. And I'm from Southampton, so that's kind of,
So you do have a property background. You went, I mean, geolocation, properties have a location. I mean, they say location, right?
They do.
Whether it's commercial or residential. So
yes, I have, and to be fair, I'm kind of half joking when I say that I haven't got a property background, because the companies that I was engaging with when I was at Ordnance Survey, some of them were PropTechs.
Yeah.
I just didn't know that at the time because PropTech is so unfamiliar.
And it hadn't quite got that label.
No,
right?
It hadn't. No. So
it was
this
just software.
It was just software.
Agents love the PropTech label. I think they've fallen back in love with it, but they definitely, probably 2019 to 2023, 2024, I think it was kind of the at least in residential, I think it was the phrase that gave agents the biggest ick.
I can imagine. Yeah. It's a double-edged sword, isn't it, having a label on these things? It's good it helps people to try and make sense of something new, but at the same time it can be almost scarier and it become a bigger thing than it actually is. As you say, it's just software.
Well, I think, exactly. And I think as we've talked about, and we'll go into this more later in our chat, but, we were talking about what the UKPA does and what is kind of PropTech. When you think about the entire built environment, everything that is property and all aspects of it, not just existing entities as well, the whole land analytics, data planning, everything, you look at all of that, and software to service every element of that. It is such a broad, I think that's the thing that kind of put people off outside of PropTech, was the fact that it was such a broad label.
Yeah.
And there were lots of companies out there that were very keen to adopt it in the early days when it was a buzzword. I think that broadness kind of slightly overwhelmed people, because literally if it had kind of any correlation to anything remotely property related, it kind of got slapped with that PropTech label. And I think there were quite a lot of existing softwares that had been around 5, 10, 15 years who'd always been very happy to call themselves software companies and suddenly started calling them PropTech. And I think a lot of agent entities were suddenly like, oh, why are you changing what you call yourself?
Interesting.
Gotta stay in your lane.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, some of these companies have been around for 10, 15, 20 years. So, but I think it has also helped. I mean, we're, as you know, doing quite a lot with government, as I'm sure we'll come on to. But I think if we hadn't had a term that we could use, an overarching term, to help make sense of this sector, this new emerging sector to an extent, there were been lots of new companies that have formed as well during the last sort of 9-10 years.
Yes.
And so I think if we didn't have that, a way to kind of have to bring that all together, we wouldn't have been able to influence government and engage with government to the extent that we have.
Well, I think flipping it the other way, right? If you just call it software, I mean, talk about the world's broadest category as well, because I mean, software is everything from a computer game or like Sudoku to what we're talking about, to AI, to, you know, that is also an insanely broad category. So yeah, I think, and you know, I think that's the challenge, isn't it? Is that you do establish these labels, and I know some people have tried to even some entities have tried to create kind of other sub-labels. Like I know Good Lord, for example, they've quite often used the label rent tech, because to try and identify the fact that yes, they are prop tech, but it is very much about the rental market. I don't necessarily think it's caught on that much. I don't think people are too fussed. I don't necessarily think the marketplace is too fussed about labels too much. I think they just sometimes get a bit frustrated with like the buzzy attitude of things around software. So look, we were talking about, so you did 5 years at OS. And so what was it about, you know, early doors UK PA? So that would have been with Eddie. In the early days. What was it that kind of excited you about the idea of creating this kind of UK PropTech Association? From working in, I mean, it was a really brave leap from you to go for something like Ordnance Survey, which is a massive organisation, a very major entity. To then kind of leap out of that into this. I mean, I know it wasn't originally a not-for-profit. It wasn't the original structure, but you know, under your stewardship, it pivoted there pretty quickly. But yeah, I'm always kind of intrigued. Like that was quite a nice setup that you were in, and then to leap out of that into a complete startup environment, which was very like, you know, let's see what happens. What I mean, if you can remember, what was it that kind of made you go, do you know what, this could be quite interesting, this could be quite fun?
Well, so being completely and totally honest, at the time, so I'd worked at Ordnance Survey for 5 years. I'd wanted to move to London. So as I said, I was in Southampton, wanted to be in the big city and, you know, live my life here. And my very first manager in the role that I had in the land and property team was Dan Hughes, who lots of people know in the industry. So we'd always kept in touch, and actually, you know, Ordnance Survey was going through a round of redundancies. So, but the team that I was in was going from 13 people, I think, to 4.
Wow.
Yes.
And you kind of wanted a change. So you were kind of like, do you know what? I'll make this decision easy for you. So I went, I could have applied for other jobs there. And I just thought, you know, I had a decision to make. Do I apply for other jobs within Ordnance Survey, or do I try something new? And I thought, well, this is quite an opportune moment for me. I want to move to London. This is a good move for me to maybe try something else. I'd been there for 5 years already. And at the same time, Dan had reached out to me. And said that there's this new organisation that started, and that he thought I would be a good fit for a head of memberships role. So, and he wasn't aware at all that any of this was going on at Ordnance Survey. Right. So it was just quite fortuitous. Kismet. As often these things kind of are. It's right place, right time, right person. Yeah, absolutely. So he introduced me to Eddie, and we had a chat, and I thought, well, this is quite different. I'm having an interview, I think, at Future PropTech. I had an interview. So very different to the Ordnance Survey environment. That was back in the days when Gary Chimmer was still piloting that. Yeah, exactly. So it was all quite new. I hadn't really heard of PropTech, but I was familiar with some of the companies that were calling themselves PropTech, like Landtech, one of the first companies that I was aware of. I was like, okay, well, there is a link here, you know, but this is a very different environment. You know, it was just me and Eddie, and you know, going from a government-owned company of 1,000 employees, team of 13, to just me and the founder was an absolute shock to the system. And I'm sure if I say this the right way, Eddie is definitely not like a government organisation in terms of his approach to things. So yeah, definitely, like, God, that was literally kind of night to day. Like,
Yeah.
it must have been really exciting though.
Yeah, it was exciting. I think I'm someone that's always up for a bit of a challenge, and probably, just dive in and then think, okay, now I've got to figure it out.
Figure it out.
Yeah, and I guess that's quite helpful because, a lot of our members that are running startups do that. So in a way I could relate to them, because I've gone from really government, corporate, with, lots of processes for everything. For good reason, but you have processes for things. You have a hierarchy to a flat structure really, and having to figure it all out yourself, which is what startup founders have to do.
Yeah, and I think also with Eddie, you had someone who had kind of the big idea of what UKPA could be, but I don't think he had too much idea of structurally what that looked like as a business. So again, kind of giving you that blank canvas, I think he would have been, I imagine, quite happy to kind of give you the reins on, right, we need to put this in place and we need to think about X, Y, Z. And
just kind of, if you need structure and you need processes, put that together. So and I think I'm probably somewhere who's more comfortable in between.
Yeah.
So it was definitely out of my comfort zone. I think I've probably been out of my comfort zone for 9 years. I don't think there's
You've got
one
comfortable
day
with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, kind of.
It's a good place to be.
Exactly.
So obviously you had kind of Eddie stewardship, early doors, and then was it about a year or was it 2 years? It was then it made the pivot into the kind of the resetting of it. You moved into a not-profit, established the board, did the rebrand and the kind of relaunch. Was that just pre-COVID, wasn't it? I think
it was pre-COVID, yeah. So we became a not-for-profit in the March 2018. So I joined in July 2017. So less than a year later.
Well, that actually happened quicker than I thought then,
really
actually.
Quickly.
I had it in my head that was a bit longer.
No, happened very quickly. And then we appointed a board of directors, which you were on as well.
I wasn't on the first one.
On the second?
I was on I think I was on the second one. Because I remember, I'm trying to remember who was on the first one. I remember obviously Ollie from Coyote, you have Matt.
Yeah, I think Mark Bruno from Datcha.
Yeah.
He was on there, quite a few different people.
But I think what was great there was you had some really quite established PropTechs there, which had some great resources.
Yeah.
And they were a great asset to UKPA in those early days where there wasn't a lot of revenue. I think from what I recall, there was a lot of assistance with delivering the new website and office space for meetings and where you worked from and things like that. I remember in my mind, Ollie stands out a lot. I remember Ollie being a hugely kind of engaged and supportive character, and Coyote being very supportive. Not to dismiss anything any of the others did. I'm sure there's others listening to this going, hold on a minute.
I know.
But I don't know why. Maybe I just remember Ollie because he's a fellow beardie.
It was Ollie and Matt Partridge who became chairman.
And that's Infobode.
Infobode, CEO of Infobode, So Matt had experience in kind of bringing communities together.
Yeah.
So he was appointed as chair, and then we had the board, and Matt and Ollie and I kind of basically got into a room and just drew up a bit of a straw man business plan for UKPA, and then Ollie put a lot of resources into it from his own company to help with the website, with the new branding. So and then all of that happened basically in 2018, and then we relaunched and rebranded in 2019. So there was a lot of meetings, kind of looking at logos and new color palettes and things, and the website, and thinking about what's our proposition for members? Do we, and at that time everybody wanted to get together and come up.
Pre-COVID, when everyone was still buzzing around, everyone loved the meetup, and I think there was a lot of buzz in the early days of the UKPA. There was a lot of different companies from all different aspects of PropTech, as you know. Like you said, I was very early member as an individual, and then bringing Depository on board because like you said, there was this huge buzz. PropTech had become this big buzzword, but like you said, there was a lot missing within that in terms of, as we've touched on, the label kind of was great, but it also, to a certain extent, for the industry, kind of confused things because it became this broad label. And then, like we said, there were challenges with government and funding and architecture and awareness and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, lots to tackle. But I think those early days, when everyone was still being very sociable and everyone was still in offices, typically 5 days a week in Shoreditch, and always kind of just down the street ready to go for a catch up and a beer, or maybe not. But yeah, I think it was really exciting those like early days, whilst UKPA kind of was finding its feet, and I think when you're running, I'll hand this over to you because I've never run a not-for-profit, but I think there must be some quite different challenges you face with that, because when you're running a commercial business, the commercials kind of drive the objectives, right? Like you've got your core objectives, but fundamentally you will have your growth plan or your targets, and most of your decisions will come back to that core thing. Whereas I imagine with UKPA, there were so many challenges that were so broad, but at the same time, you guys had to establish some core revenue just to supplement the structure of running the operation, right? And the team that you've built around you, you've still got that business side of the element of the structure. So what's that like, trying to not having, like I said, not having that kind of overarching like profit driven commerciality? What's that journey like, trying to balance kind of what you're trying to achieve with the fact that also, it's not like you've got a product to sell. You can't overtly commercialize it, because then it kind of pivots into something altogether different.
Yeah, it is challenging. Absolutely. I think it suits me because I've always been somebody that's been driven by, wanting to make an impact, and not necessarily, revenue driven or commercial driven in that sense. But of course you do have to make it stack up, because at the end of the day, I'm employed by BPF now. So I have to earn the salary from that. And then if I have a team and I was trying to sort of make sure we had enough resources behind it to do what we needed to do, then I have to pay them as well. So we do have to be able to cover our costs, but in a way that, is still achieving our mission that's the kind of primary focus for us. And then revenue is kind of secondary to that. And I think the biggest challenge is that if I compare to our members, startup founders, that's obviously a whole set of other challenges, but you can raise investment, and if you're successful in raising investment, then you can bring the right people in quite quickly, and make and accelerate faster. And I think for us it's been slow growth, because
you can't leverage the commerciality of it, because then you kind of compromise what you are as an organisation, right? If you guys, you'd made that very right decision, early doors, to make it a not-for-profit. And that's great, because I think it legitimizes, it brings a huge amount of legitimacy to what the core objectives were. But it equally kind of handcuffs you a little bit, because like you said, you can't go, invest in us and we'll grow to X, Y, Z, or, buy a stake and, the dividend will pay back your investment over 5 years, or, whatever it is. I think it's, but I think you're right. I think it's really interesting what you were saying. I think for me, like, that kind of entrepreneurial mindset, is about building a business. I think money and profitability, like I say, I touched on, for a lot of businesses, you're brought back to that, because that is typically how a commercial entity is ultimately, or in the most simplest terms, is assessed. What's your growth, what's your profit? But I think if you talked to most people who start businesses, like, yes, absolutely, there is a commercial objective, both personally and commercially. But I think, if I think about me with the depository, my passion is very much in the objectives of what we're trying to do and developing the product, and the commercials are kind of like a byproduct of that. That's I didn't create Depository to make money. I created Depository to change something, and hopefully we'll make some money along the way as well. And I think for a lot of I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, and I think for a lot of people who end up leading and guiding and framing businesses, organizations, I think that is, that's the core. I think that is for most people the driver, that fascination, that passion with wanting to solve a problem, with wanting to make something better, with wanting to help people. I mean, those tend to be kind of the core three things that underpin that. And of course, there are some that we all know. There are plenty entrepreneurs out there where it is just about the money, and that's all well and good, and nothing wrong with that either. But yeah, I think when you're driving something forward and you're really driven more by your purpose and objectives than the commerciality. I think it can be a slower, longer journey. And at times it can feel tough, but you get a bit of kudos for the authenticity of it, and also you wake up every morning feeling totally happy with who you are and what you're doing. You look yourself in the mirror and can feel pretty happy with where you're going with it. So look, obviously I joined the board, I'm forgetting now whether it was 2019 to 2021 or 2020 to 2022. I can't remember. I think it was 2019 to 2021.
I think so.
I seem to remember we did manage to get a few in-person board meetings.
Yes, we did.
Before the joys of COVID hit. Hip hip hooray. Which, as we all know, for tech was kind of a blessing and a curse, obviously, because for everyone, obviously the market, well, pretty much all markets froze for about 6 months, didn't it? Because no one really knew what that new world was like. But I think if we're from a prop tech perspective, I think it definitely shifted a lot of people's mindsets, particularly those sat on the fence who were kind of looking at prop tech and being like, yeah, it might improve things, but this has always worked. Like, the business is still growing, it's still profitable, and this is how it's always been done. So, I think it did shift the needle. Obviously, the massive thing with remote working, which is, lots of businesses now. I mean, that you're seeing a shift. There are industries and businesses that have obviously increasingly shifted back to a more traditional office structure of 5 days in. But I think what is nice now as well is I found it's generally changed everyone's attitude to doing things online. Like, I mean, I think with us Depository dealing with most of our clients, the vast majority of our clients, we never meet in person. We do everything online, webinar, our demos, our setup calls, training, support, we do everything online. And I love that, for us, for I think for a lot of bootstrapped and early stage companies, it's really good. Not only to be able to tap into that, but I think what was really interesting was pre-COVID, there was a real resistance to that, but there was also kind of what's the word? An attitude, or a kind of, people would almost look down and like, oh, you don't want to come and see me face to face.
It was a different culture.
It was a mindset. There we go. It was a different culture, and mindset, and attitude to it all. And I think what was nice was not only did we get tech make it better, easier, and simpler to do, but it massively changed everyone's mindset around it, from being like, oh God, can't you come and see me in person? Can't we meet up? To be like, to now it's like, oh, can we just do this online? Actually,
does it need to be in person?
Exactly. Do we have to meet up? So moving on. So like we said, I was quite passionately involved with early doors in the organisation. It was really quite exciting where it was going, and like we said, sat on the board. But as we know, and I never talked about this openly out of great respect for you guys and where you were going, but as you know, I quietly stepped away after my board seat, and it was because we'd spoken about particularly during that board term, in the early stage, or really up until nowish, there was this kind of natural lean into the more commercial real estate side of the PropTech business. And I think it's very understandable why that was. I think, you're talking about much bigger assets. I think for a marketplace as well, it trades in a very different manner to residential. As we know, residential, you've got a bajillion individual homeowners, so you've got this insanely fragmented property ownership market. But also, when you look at real estate in the UK, we're unlike pretty much any other country in terms of most countries. The industry is kind of 80% corporate to 20% independent. But in the UK, in residential agency, it's completely opposite. It's 80% independent to 20% corporate. So it's 80% 1 to 3 branch agencies. And then you've got your handful of big players. And that is starting to shift now. I wonder if that's maybe shifted more 70-30 now, with the fact that you have got the bigger corporates they've been acquiring quite a bit the last few years. So I wonder if that's shifted a little bit, but still. And I think with that came the challenges of no company could go out there and tap into a massive amount of housing stock with ease. And equally, outside of your handful of corporates, you had this incredibly disseminated market. So to get any really quick market permutation was really, really hard. Whereas within corporate real estate, of course, very different. Much fewer players in the agency market. Much bigger, whatever you want to call it, portfolios. And then equally looking at the client base, you've got REITs and things like British Land and all this sort of stuff, who have millions and millions of square foot of real estate that you can tap into and partnership with. And I think equally that was really exciting because, for example, if you worked with someone like British Land, you could work with everything from how to make their buildings more energy efficient to the kind of tenant community groups within commercial buildings, like community experiences, all this sort of stuff. So I think it was easy to understand, although it felt a bit frustrating at the time. It was really easy to understand why UKPA kind of just found itself pulled that way, because I think the conversations were cleaner and bigger. You could have these big conversations and things could happen. Within 6-12 months you could see a massive, again, I don't know why I keep referring to British Land, but you could see big entities like that, probably because they're the only massive commercial entity I know off by heart, because it's not really my bag. But you've got Portland Estates as well, GPE, Great Portland Estates as well, as another great example, where you had also, because they were big entities, you had some really interesting leadership on the commercial side.
You always had people that were in innovation roles. There was, a huge surge in heads of innovation, and now increasingly it's they're becoming C-suite level as well. But those were the people that typically then engaged with us because it was part of their job. It was their core job.
We had some fascinating talks. I can't remember. You'll probably remember the chap who I think was heading up innovation for GPE, for Great Portland Estates.
James Pennant.
I remember some of his talks were fascinating, and I remember sitting there thinking, my God, if we had a residential entity that A, had this kind of market share, but B, had this kind of attitude of a really bold strategy, but that was clearly open to, adaptation. A huge embracement of innovation, like you said, heads of innovation. I think what's really interesting is you look at residential real estate now, and we're still not there yet.
No.
You look at your big, you look at your LRGs, your Lomans, your Connells Countrywide, TPFG. The corporate structure is still very traditional. You've still got your CEO, your CFO, your CTO, and CIO, whatever, but they're still, I think in residential, they're still operating in quite a traditional format in that I mean, I can't think of any of those who have an open and public kind of digital innovation strategy. Whereas loads of commercial entities have had one for the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think, that I'd love to understand within the corporate world, because again, it's, corporates to approach things from a very different mindset, and I think to independent business, obviously, and I think it's really interesting that we had that kind of eagerness within commercial. There was this instant appetite for like, oh, this is exciting.
Yeah.
We can change things. To whereas I feel like in residential, it's still quite reactionary.
Yeah.
There aren't many entities out there who have a very clear digital strategy of, what do they want to achieve with tech in the next 5 years, 10 years.
And I think there's also different incentives.
Yeah.
As you say, it's the structure of the organisations, but it's also then as part of that structure, the incentives that you have to use technology or not. If it in the agency world, if you're able to get instructions and then sell property and still make a decent amount from that, then where's the incentive to use technology? And I think that is changing now. I think there's obviously a big drive from government to digitise the transaction process, to digitise planning, all different areas that affect ultimately the consumer, which will hopefully, drive that change as well. But in the commercial space, it's been very much about, well, how do we increase efficiency and cut costs and increase the value of the asset,
or make the asset more appealing with the kind of tenant communities and I mean, I suppose the closest I can equate it to in resi is the build to rent space. I think that is where you've got a kind of similar mindset in terms of they've wanted to kind of almost each development is a brand with a lifestyle and a community, and that is all driven into gaining value, perceived value, and also a realised value as an asset with facilities, amenities, partnerships with things like Uber and all this sort of stuff that kind of deliver that experience. And I think that's the closest, but obviously build to rent, because of the ridiculous planning and development processes in this country, obviously like build to rent is growing, but it's not been the huge delivery of housing that I think so many had hoped. I think a lot have been surprised. We obviously had John Lewis completely pull the plug on their operation recently. You've got really, and now you've got that slight pivot into, you've got the likes of Blackstone and Lloyds, who, Lloyds are buying second-hand homes. You've got Blackstone picking up a lot of the new build developments, going straight to developer and acquiring developments. And then obviously you've got the likes of Essential Living and so on and so forth in the build space. But I think they're probably the closest to the commercial real estate kind of attitude and structure. But they're a very small, fundamentally, they're still a very small part of residential real estate. So whereas commercial, this is centuries old. So there's assets old and new, So look, I think it's really interesting. It's really interesting. We've got that, and so touching on that. So we are running out of time. So we're actually hopping on a call with MHCOG later, aren't we, with a bunch of people about some of the things you touched on, and it's really good to see government are getting better. I think a lot of the messages that we're giving them are fundamentally the same messages we've been giving them for the last 5 to 10 years, about structure, architecture, access to systems, the digitization of really anything that government dictates or delivers. Has got to be delivered in a kind of digital first format. We've talked a lot about the adoption of UPRNs to kind of streamline how data is linked to a property for the benefit of everything from, compliance to regulation to trying to solve the nightmare that is buying and selling a residential property in this country and how long it takes. So just a couple of things to touch on. So tell us a little bit. So UKPA, or rather BPF that owns UKPA, there's quite a large change going on at the moment. There's a very exciting change going on. Do you want to just tell the listeners a little bit more about this fairly recent kind of multi-merger, and what that kind of means and what we're going to be seeing in the coming months?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So we, as you said, we are part of the British Property Federation. We merged with them end of 2023. So we are governed by BPF, which means we've now had access to, the last few years, a wider reach of property companies and professionals interested in technology, run a tech and innovation programme, bringing our members together with BPF members, and have been weaving technology into the policy work that the BPF does. And that's a really big part of what they do. Is BPF's kind of bread and butter is to engage with various different government departments on policy which affects real estate. And now the members of BPF, Association of Real Estate Funds, RF, and Investment Property Forum, have voted for a merger to happen between those three entities to form Real Estate UK. So that's happening 30th of April. So from the beginning of May, there will be, brand new website. All three organisations will be under the RE UK brand, so there will be no BPF, RF and IPF anymore, and we will become part of Real Estate UK, which is,
and as the label kind of suggests, it's kind of like a super real estate entity.
Yeah. So I think, all the three organisations have been doing slightly different things, but I think complement each other well. And I think also been engaging with government, and so this is a way to have a unified voice back into government to represent the whole entire real estate industry in the UK, and to just be more powerful
messaging as well, right? More powerful messaging.
Yeah.
Make sure everything's a bit more aligned.
Yeah.
And hopefully, I think it's really exciting. I think I'm really excited to see whether we see a shift in how much government listens and, more importantly, acts on what we're telling them. I know, obviously, whilst there is a consistency within the people within MHCLG, they are ultimately always to a certain, at a whim to whichever political party and leader we have in power at the time. So obviously they are at the mercy of where the wind blows to a certain degree, to that extent. But it would be really nice to kind of see some of these core things that we've just touched on come to fruition, because I think we all agree they are kind of the building blocks, the kind of core infrastructure that's going to allow so much more exciting things to happen.
Yeah.
And in terms of the UK PropTech scene, which is a massive part of the UK economy, it's going to create a much more exciting landscape for more companies to come into the space, particularly with AI and everything that's doing with coding and development and the kind of the generation of ideas, particularly at an MVP level anyway. I think it's also about that, right? It's about building this really exciting kind of architecture where we can continue to grow the UK PropTech scene as a globally desired and exciting and innovative platform. And I think that's really exciting.
I think there's two kind of ambitions that we're seeing from MHCLG. One is, how do we improve the services that affect the public when it comes to housing? So delivery of housing, the planning process, the transaction process, etc. How do we make it more efficient, transparent, faster as well? And all of that is to do with the economic benefits of that, but the experience of the members of the public. And they really understand now the importance of technology underpinning all of that. So they've been funding innovation for a number of years now. I think they've invested, or not invested, but given grant funding for about £16 million to local authorities, typically, to use PropTech. So, they've also been putting their money where their mouth is. They've been driving it, but also funding some of this stuff as well.
Yeah.
But the other part of it, as you mentioned, is the PropTech sector as a whole, it adds so much to the economy. And that was quite clear in the Opportunity for PropTech report that we launched with them last year, or the year 2024, I think it was. So that's really sort of shown the impact that PropTech has today across the built environment, but then the potential impact if we were to scale PropTech. So that's really what they're trying to do now, is to think about what role does government play in helping to scale PropTech? What levers can we pull to unlock innovation, unlock scale across PropTech, and then specifically with a housing lens as well, to build 1.5 million homes and all of the things that have to happen to be able to achieve that, including the planning process as well. So there's quite a bit there, and they've been funding us, working closely in partnership with us to look at all of those things and to convene the right people across public and private sector. And now we're really getting into the weeds of the levers. What policy interventions and what levers do we need to be able to grow the PropTech sector, which is the call that we've got.
Yeah, and I think what's been nice as well, and I think I noticed this very much through the evolution more recently of what was the Renters Reform Bill and now the Renters' Rights Act. What's been nice the last couple of years on the residential side is there definitely seems to be an attitude shift from government organisations like MHCLG to actually engage with the industry more. Not just PropTech, but also real estate industries, estate agencies. And actually what's been nice as well, whereas before there was some engagement, but it was very much behind closed doors and with the big boys, throughout that renters reform rights journey, both Conservative and Labour, there's definitely been an opening up. Look, we don't always get what we want, and I think that's something you've always got to understand, particularly when it's more legislative than technology or architecture. But it definitely feels like government's attitude has shifted a little bit in terms of help us understand this better, so that we can kind of help you make it better, kind of thing. That's been quite nice. And so just to round this off, and we're not going to go into too much detail because there's going to be more about this coming out more formally in the coming weeks. But what's been really exciting is we've been engaging again more than usual recently, because partly with the merger and everything else, but also with the space moving, we're now looking at this kind of residential steering group.
Yes, we are. Yes. So in our kind of objective to really amplify our influence and to represent the PropTech sector more broadly, we've introduced this new residential PropTech committee alongside two other kind of thematic committees in the membership as well, which will help us to really know the right things to be saying to government. I mean, one of the biggest challenges I have is we've talked about PropTech being so broad. Our members are the ones that have the knowledge on the ground of what really is going to make the biggest difference to them, or what's the biggest challenge that they've got. So being able to really work with the committee to understand that at greater depth will help me be able to represent our members better and really drive change there, and then shape the right events, the right thought leadership to bring in the right people in terms of the buyer side to that as well. So,
and I think there's a really exciting group. And again, we're not going to name any names now, but there's the initial meeting that we've had. There's some really interesting people sat around that table. From a lot of different areas of experience. But there's a lot of people sat around that table who've kind of been there and done it. They've been through different aspects of agency or supporting agency, or large-scale residential operations in some kind of shape or form. And that's really exciting. And I think, looking back to, as we've talked about very openly, kind of sometimes my frustrations in the early days with UKPA, because it felt like sometimes there was only a couple of residential voices in the room. And a lot of them were kind of startups like me, rather than we didn't necessarily get the big established resi PropTech players engaging that much early doors. But what's nice is sat around that table, the other day, there are absolutely some big names individually, but also some really well-known, well-established entities sat around that table. And I think it's really exciting to see what that's going to achieve, because it was nice, talking about when we briefly touched on what we kind of all thought our core objectives were, and there was a lot of commonality there. And I think for you guys, as UK real estate, like you said, having these pockets of expertise and focus now, it allows you to drill down into that, but it will also allow you to spot the massive commonalities between that. Oh, hold on. I think UPRNs is probably quite an obvious one that I think we'll see come into all of them, because it kind of underpins the data architecture of how things are attributed and cleanliness of data and everything else. So I think that's one that will come out. But I think what will be really interesting for you guys is, as you see this, is these commonalities of these quite different entities of focus.
Yeah.
But these threads of where it really aligned, but also it's like, oh, actually, if that happens and that kind of leads to that, and that will deliver that.
Yeah.
I think it's a really exciting time.
Yeah, well, it allows us to, as you say, be able to really kind of spot these threads, and then we can tell a better story to government if we can say, look, across the PropTech sector, all of our members, or significant amount of our members, are asking for this. If we do this, it will unlock potential for this part of the sector to grow, which has this impact on the UK government's ambitions. So I think it allows us to do that. So above those kind of three thematic committees, we'll also have a research and policy board, which will look at those commonalities. So we'll really have a kind of mechanism to be able to do that.
So just lastly, before we sign off, so something I think is worth saying is the UK PropTech Association. It's absolutely not just for PropTechs, right? It's really important that we get agents, both individuals and businesses, kind of engaging with the organisation.
Yeah.
And bringing that whole ecosystem kind of to the table. We want agents in this conversation, both as independent. I mean, I'm quite a unique entity sat around that table in terms of I still do both day jobs. But we've got, and again, you look at a lot of the people sat around the table we're talking about, a lot of them have walked the walk before the roles that they are in now, or again, are still very much in that space. So let's just talk a little bit about how people can engage with UK PropTech. Because there are a few different kind of memberships and ways people can be part of kind of the community, isn't there?
Yeah, so our membership model is for PropTechs and then technology investors. But we still have others involved in terms of the events. So typically we target the kind of property side through BPF, or will be Real Estate UK. So property companies that are part of that organisation automatically be sent invitations to events that we put on.
Yeah.
Because most of the events that we do is about bringing tech and property professionals together.
Yeah.
But outside of that, we're also partnering and working closely with organisations like Property Mark, as you know, to broaden that reach even further. So even if it's an agent that's not, a BPF or Real Estate UK member, they can still get involved and attend the events. We're really keen to make sure that we're bringing everybody into this.
Yeah, it's really important that agents are part of that whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
So look, guys, if you want to find out more about the UKPA, what's the website address again? Is it ukproptech.com? ukproptech.com. There we go. Simple. You'll find tons of information on there, not just about the organisation and what it does, but also talks that they've held before, schedules that are in the future, membership categories, all that sort of stuff. If you're interested in just coming along and checking out a session to see what it's about, reach out to Sammy and her team and just kind of say hi, and I'm sure they'll figure out a way to accommodate you in some way or another if an event's not too full. But yeah, look, Sammy, it's been great catching up. It's really exciting to see what this next kind of phase of growth for the UK PA is, and off the back of UK real estate and all this other stuff. It's really exciting to see, and it's exciting to see you still at the helm and still doing your thing.
Still here, still doing it.
Still dancing the dance, and with a smile on your face, which is the most important thing.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming in for a chat. Guys, thank you so much. Like I said, do check out the UK PropTech website, connect with Sammy on LinkedIn, and if you've got any questions, hit them in and we'll share them and come back to you. But until next time, bye.